let's do this. So, I've been reading online. I'm not even talking about just here. But there's this thing in these playoffs, and it happens every year, where fans decide who should win the cup. And I'll be honest, these aren't people who are watching the game in a frame of mind of being objective. There's no objectivity to any conspiracy theory I've heard. It is to fit the narrative. So, what fits the narrative is the question. Now, I've got all these logos on the board, and I intentionally flooded it. I was going to have one of every team, but I thought, why not just have as many teams? I can just throw on multiple logos if I have to. And I'm going to go ahead and explain why, from theories I've heard either this year or over the years, why teams don't deserve Stanley Cups. And I didn't practice this. And we'll just see who's left on the board as teams that I think fans would accept as Stanley Cup champions. And again, and people point this out. I know this is a minority. I know. But right now it's a very vocal minority. So, which teams don't deserve a Stanley Cup in the eyes of fans who have this opinion that the NHL somehow fixes it? They fix it. First teams I'm going to pull off the board, Southern teams. So if you live in the South, clearly you need help from the NHL. You can't legitimately win a Stanley Cup, and you don't deserve it either. So I'll go ahead and pull Vegas off the board now. It's their first year, and again, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I'm just going by the thoughts of people who say this. I'll go ahead and pull Dallas off too, because Dallas would qualify as the same thing. Dallas can't draw, yada, yada, yada. Nashville as well. Nashville, I heard that last year. The only reason that Nashville gets fans into the building is because they're winning. That's it. So there you go. I think I've got all of them off the board. Now, California, LA's not allowed to win because they won 2 Stanley Cups. So if they win their third in less than a decade, that makes them one of Gary Bettman's favorites. Speaking of Gary Bettman's favorites, the Chicago Blackhawks also qualify as a favorite. Oh, I got to pull that LA off as well. The Ducks, well, you can't give it to the Ducks because the Mighty Ducks movie and all that. And obviously, there would be some kind of shenanigans going on. And also, odds are that during any kind of a Stanley Cup run that the Anaheim Ducks would make fan bases really angry. Look at Calgary and look at Edmonton last year and even Nashville. Players on the Ducks have a way of making fan bases angry. All right. San Jose, I'm not going to pull San Jose off the board yet because I don't think there'd be a whole lot of complaints. Detroit, there would be. Detroit's had too many Stanley Cups. Clearly, they're a favorite. I've heard that before. I have heard that the NHL favors Detroit. Pittsburgh, absolutely. Pittsburgh's a favorite. They have to come off the board. So who are we left with? Well, the Islanders have to come off the board because they don't get enough fan support. And fan support, for some reason, means that you do or don't deserve a Stanley Cup, too, in the eyes of some. I got to get that Detroit off the board, too. So I'll go ahead and pull Columbus off because if Columbus ever won anything, that's the argument that would be used there. So we're getting down to it, aren't we? Back in '94, I heard that the Rangers, Gary Bettman's from New York, so that rules them out. And New Jersey as well. I heard that New York, New Jersey, too close. So again, the NHL head office would be putting this together. And recently, for some reason, Washington, they're trying to get Ovechkin a cup. I'm leaving them on the board. I can't believe that. I just can't. Oilers, well, Connor McDavid, right? This would be a big PR thing. The Edmonton Oilers winning the Stanley Cup would be a huge PR move by the NHL to silence people that say that the league is rigged, and it would get Connor McDavid a Stanley Cup ring. So there. The Toronto Maple Leafs, much the same thing. Well, if the Leafs win, obviously it's a move by the NHL to quiet people who say that the NHL has it in for Canada. And that would be to get Austin Matthews a Stanley Cup, because Austin Matthews being from Arizona, the NHL would definitely want to see a guy from Arizona who's coming off the board because they don't deserve a team. And again, I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I'm just saying what I've heard over the years. This isn't something new. This is something that happens every year. Every year we're going to hear these same arguments. So what are we left with? Well, that Carolina's got to come off the board. I'm going to pull my Bruins off the board because Boston, when they won the Stanley Cup in 2011, one of the arguments that was out there was that Gregory Campbell played for the 2011 Boston Bruins. His father is Colin Campbell, or his uncle's Colin Campbell. I know they're related, either father or uncle. Either way, the narrative out there was that Colin Campbell rigged Game 7 between Boston and Tampa so there weren't any penalties so that Boston could go to the Stanley Cup Final, and that the Stanley Cup Finals unfolded the way they did because Gregory Campbell was supposed to win a Stanley Cup by virtue of being related to Colin Campbell. It's a stretch, but it was out there. So who do we got left? Well, I'll go ahead and pull off any doubles. So I'll pull off any extra logos for teams that are up here, and I'm not worrying about which ones I'm pulling off, just making sure I don't have any more doubles on the board so that we have a good idea of which teams right now are allowed to win a Stanley Cup according to theories that are out there. So you've got Ottawa, Philly, St. Louis, Minnesota, Montreal, Washington, Colorado, Winnipeg, Calgary, Vancouver, Buffalo, and San Jose. Missed the playoffs, first round, missed the playoffs. Still technically alive and allowed to win it. First round, currently down 3-1 against Vegas as I'm recording this. Out of the playoffs, out in the second round. And what stands out to me is that if we're going to continue any kind of a narrative where the NHL favors teams that have won Stanley Cups before, which I've heard, then you have to pull out those ones. And what starts to emerge is that the only teams that people don't attack for the most part are the ones that have never won anything. So if you support a team that has never won a Stanley Cup, odds are people aren't saying anything about the league wanting your team to win. Oh, I got to pull Philly out of there. Philly won a Stanley Cup, Shannon. And there's Ottawa fans out there saying we won. Well, it's not for about 80 years, so I'll go ahead and leave you guys in there. And it's funny, too, because Stanley Cup Final in 2011, I don't remember hearing a lot about the league rigging things for Vancouver. I don't, and you can correct me in the comment section below if I'm wrong. Ottawa, I didn't hear anything about that. St. Louis, but again, Ottawa's been in the finals once. St. Louis hasn't been in the finals since their third year in existence. Minnesota's never got out of the third round. They only made it there once. Washington hasn't been to the finals since 98. This is the first year Winnipeg's won a round. Buffalo hasn't gone anywhere since the 1999 Stanley Cup Final. If you're looking for postseason success that looks sustainable, there isn't any. And San Jose has that one Stanley Cup Final back in 2016, and I can't remember hearing anything, but at the time, I was reading everything about Sidney Crosby and how the league was making sure Sidney Crosby got championships. And this is why it's crazy. These are the teams that I think you'd have the least amount of problem with fans seeing win a Stanley Cup, and yet I've seen it with Washington. I have. And it's funny because I made the joke that Gary Bettman goes to Capitals games so clearly. And there are people now that say that, like, oh, Gary Bettman's a fan of the Capitals, so, yeah, he's been screwing them since he took over, so he's doing a really poor job of making it work in their favor. But, you know, and it's funny because there are people who say, well, you're just a sore loser, and it's not just that. It's a complete and total mistrust in everything in the sport, and the part that I don't understand, and I see these comments being thrown out are, for people who believe that these are the only teams that are allowed to win a Stanley Cup. And I'm telling you right now, if you're Canadian and you're not a Canucks fan, you're swearing at the fact that the Canucks are still on the board because you don't want to see them win. This isn't about who you don't want to see win. This is about who's allowed. That as fans, there are I've narrowed it down to 7 teams that I think you'd see the least amount of flack online for if they won a Stanley Cup. But honestly, let's say Buffalo gets Dahlin. So here's how the theories go. Buffalo gets Rasmus Dahlin, and they go like gangbusters this coming season. They pick up a goaltender, they pull off something crazy. They get a Carey Price type goaltending performance, MVP Vezina kind of thing going on from whoever their goaltender is. They go into the playoffs and they steamroll. Immediately you're going to see, well, yeah, but it's because Dahlin's in the league and they want him to get success this first time around, and they're trying to save the franchise in Buffalo. That's really their concern. And, Bettman's from New York and Buffalo's in New York, so clearly this is a move on his behalf to try to prop up the franchise. It's really sad because really, it should be Ottawa they're helping. And that's how this goes. I watched the NBA. I watched a video by TYT Sports, and I don't usually watch much of their stuff. Usually because if they talk about hockey, I just shake my head and say, wow, I could do this better. And I'm not trying to be an ass. I'm just saying that a lot of their commenters don't seem to watch the sports that they're doing videos about. And they had this big thing on, the draft lottery is rigged. And they went through, okay, here's who's going to be the top 3 teams in all likelihood, because clearly the NBA rigs it. And the top 3 were not any of the teams that they said should be top 3. And I thought it was really interesting, because even in the comment section, there were all kinds of, oh yeah, no, this is rigged, and the NBA sets this up. And this is so absolutely, oh yeah, no, they set this up. And oh, this team only had a 2% chance of winning a draft lottery and they won it. Does that mean if you win the lottery, a system where you have millions to 1 chance of winning and you win it, that you're going to sigh, look at the tick and go, man, this was rigged because you won it? A 2% chance still means you have a 2% chance of winning. So again, I know going into the NHL draft lottery this year, there was a lot of, if the Oilers win, it's rigged. And all I could think was, if the Oilers win, when it's proved it's not rigged, because they have very low percentage chance of winning. I do wonder how much time people spend worrying about this, because at this time of year, it's everywhere. I've had people saying in comments, all right, just leave it alone, don't talk about it. But I see it everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. You can't congratulate a team on a win in the playoffs without somebody jumping on that comment and saying, well, clearly the referees were in the pocket of insert name of team that won game. It's a mentality that goes back, way back. And I've said before, I remember the first time I heard one of these theories. I'm out buying myself popping chips, because when I was 20, that's what you do, or 21. And I hear it. Well, the Rangers beat the Canucks. Did you see that? And I thought, okay, well, they're talking about the Canucks. And this was just after Game 7. And I hear, well, yeah, it's all fixed, though. They wanted the Rangers to win because, Bettman's from New York, and, clearly that's the team they wanted to win. That's why the Canucks didn't win the game. I thought, wait, what am I hearing? And the other guy agreed with him, like, yeah, no, totally, man. The league didn't want the Canucks to win. That's why they didn't win the Stanley Cup in 1994. I'm adding in 1994. He didn't actually put in the year, because that would have been weird. At that point, I would have had to go over and go, why did you put in the year? And then it would have turned into something else. But there are people who think that the league generally rigs this. Here's what I see. The league wants to make a maximum amount of money. And they look at the US, and they see that it is a largely still untapped market. And they're already making a ton of money on it. Canadian money, they're already getting. And we Canadians, our dollar kind of sucks. It's not worth as much as an American dollar. And there's 10 times more Americans than there are Canadians. Anybody who's in business in Canada looks at the States and salivates over it. All Canadian business does it. And some succeed, but most fail. A lot of them will just stay in Canada, or they'll try going into the States and it fails. Watch an episode of Dragon's Den. Dragon's Den is the Canadian version of Shark Tank in the U.S., and you'll see it. So I don't see it. And I've been, I watched last night's game with my eyes wide open. Last night, Vegas beats Winnipeg 3-2, and did Vegas dive on that first penalty by Winnipeg? Yeah, probably. But was it a dumb play by Winnipeg? Yeah. Did Scheifele get sticked in the face, and should it have been a 4-minute penalty? Yup. Did the referee miss it? Yeah, he missed it. And I don't see it. So this is the last time that I'll cover it. I did the ironic and sarcastic "It's all Bettman's fault" video, which has been great fun, and I'm glad I did it because it allowed some of us to discuss this off the channel. And there are a lot of fans who are not buying the theories of only these teams are allowed to win. And again, in the comment section below, I would expect fans to come up and tell me why these teams aren't allowed to win. For instance, when Colorado won the Stanley Cup in '96, they had just got their team from Quebec. They weren't allowed to win either. So, I've got these teams up here, and there was a time where every time Montreal won, people are like, oh, again? Seriously? And yeah, there's definitely reasons why I could pull other teams off the board. But once one of these teams wins, there'll be some magical reason why they're not allowed. Okay, I'm done on this topic. This is the end of this topic. I have a finalists video to do this morning, and I'm going to get to work on that. And yeah, so let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And for people who are frustrated with the vocal minority, it is a minority. And the best advice I can give is not to engage with some of these, because you can't change a person's mind who's decided that only certain teams are allowed to win a cup, or else it's proof that the league is corrupt. You can't change their mind. There is nothing you say, nothing you can do that will change their mind. We live in a very polarized society where you sit on one side of the fence, you sit on the other, and there's no in between. If you're reasonable and you see both sides of an argument, that means you're wishy-washy and they don't want to talk to you. So it's a strange world we live in, but we're there. All right, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through and you just happened upon this video, and thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.